The need to reload a pistol rarely comes up in actual defensive shootings, especially if you're not in law enforcement. It's not a skill I would suggest you prioritize or spend a ton of dedicated practice time on unless you're interested in competition. But just like I said a couple of weeks ago with the shotgun reload, since you have to reload the gun when you're at the range anyway, you might as well learn and practice a technique that can be used in a defensive context. You don't necessarily need a lightning fast reload, but you should be able to do it smoothly and consistently without fumbling. So let's take a look at some techniques. If the gun has been fired until it's empty and the slide is locked back, we need to do an emergency reload. You bring the gun in, drop the magazine, insert a new mag, close the slide, and get back on target. Okay, so breaking that down, the first step is to drop your elbow down and bring the gun inward toward your chin. At the same time, you want to rotate it like that, like if you were going to look through the trigger guard, but you don't actually want the gun to be up that high. You want it to be just below eye level so you can keep your head up and maintain awareness of what's going on around you. While you're doing that, move your thumb to the magazine release and go ahead and drop the magazine. If you can't reach it with your thumb, you can use your support hand thumb to hit it. And if you're left-handed and you don't have a ambidextrous magazine release, you can use your middle finger or your trigger finger to drop the magazine. Once that mag is empty, it is useless, it is dead to you, so just let it drop to the ground. On the off chance that the magazine does not drop free and it gets kind of stuck in there like that, happens every once in a while, you can just use your support hand to grab it, rip it out, and drop it. With most modern pistols, the magazine should drop free just fine. While all that's going on with your strong hand, you're going to use your support hand to grab a fresh magazine. It's probably going to be in a pouch somewhere on your belt, and it's going to be upside down, and you want the bullets facing forward. So it might be up here like I've got mine, or it could be over here or behind your hip. No matter where it is, you want the bullets facing to the front because you're going to grab it with your index finger along the front like that, and that's going to help you guide it into the magazine well. So bring it up to the mag well like that. And when you get it to about here, it helps if you look at the open part of the mag well that you can see here. That's going to help you hit the target. And then when you get it part of the way in, use your palm to just seat that magazine firmly. Now keep your support hand moving on upward toward the slide. Grasp the rear of the slide with an overhand grip like this, and then push forward with your firing hand and release with your support hand to chamber around. Now all you've got to do is reacquire a two-handed grip and keep shooting, or if there's no target, you go to a low ready and reassess the situation. There are a lot of different variations to these steps, but most techniques for the emergency reload will follow that basic pattern. I do want to address one alternative for chambering around once you've got the magazine in there. Instead of going overhand to rack the slide, you can also use your thumb to hit the slide release, sometimes called the slide lock. You can shave a few tenths of a second off your reload time by doing it this way, but there are a few disadvantages. First, the slide release is not in the same spot on every pistol. Sometimes it can be hard to activate or hard to reach or just really stiff. So for example, if I were to train a lot with this Beretta, which has a slide release that's really big and easy to use, but then my everyday carry gun was like a Smith & Wesson Shield, which has a small and fairly stiff slide release, the muscle memory I've developed here is not necessarily going to carry over. I might have a hard time doing that reload under stress with the smaller gun. Another issue is that when you use the slide release, you can also run the risk of closing the slide before you've actually got the magazine completely seated, which means you won't actually have a round in the chamber, but you probably won't know that until you try to fire the gun. So using the overhand rack method is a little slower, but it's more reliable and it will work with just about any pistol out there. Now, having said that, I think people get way too worked up over which method is better. I actually use the slide release most of the time because that's just how I learned to perform a reload years ago. I've got thousands of repetitions on it, and even when I've tried to train myself to rack the slide instead, the second I run a drill on a timer or induce even the slightest amount of stress into my training, I just automatically revert back to hitting that slide release. So I've just decided to embrace it because it works pretty well for me, but it's not what I would recommend for everybody. What you really don't want to do is ram the magazine in there so hard that you trip the slide release without even touching it. Sometimes that's called auto-forwarding. This happens occasionally with some pistols, usually polymer framed guns, and it's not a feature It is a defect. It very frequently results in a closed slide with an empty chamber, and even when it doesn't, it's not a reliable enough technique to count on working every time because the gun is just not designed to be reloaded that way. If you're really going for maximum speed, just hitting the slide release with your thumb is not going to be any slower. Instead of an emergency reload, you may also need to perform a speed reload, or I actually prefer the term proactive reload. This one is used when you've fired a few rounds and the gun is not empty, but now there's no longer any immediate threat. The bad guy is down or he's run away, but there's always a chance for something else to happen. Maybe the guy who ran off is about to come back with some of his buddies. It's not likely, but it's possible, and if you have a spare magazine, it would be a good idea to top off that gun. So just like the emergency reload, you bring the gun in like this, but instead of dropping the mag right away, I'm going to wait until I've got the fresh magazine right here next to the gun so I can make the switch and minimize the amount of time where I have no magazine in the gun. The odds of needing to reload in an actual encounter are incredibly small, but it's not difficult to learn how to do properly just in case you are one of the unlucky few who has to use that skill for real. If you want more shooting tips like this one, be sure to subscribe and buy some ammo from LuckyGunner.com to support our channel.